Marisol, the friend beneath the water. This is a true story. I have never told anyone the full version until now. 6 years ago, I made a promise to save a little girl's life. But here's the thing about promises made to the dead. They do not just go away. They follow you home. The girl I saved is alive. She is healthy. She does not remember any of it. But the thing that tried to drown her remembers me. And last week, I found wet footprints leading from my bathroom to my bed. My name is Lucía Reyes. I was 16 years old when this happened, a junior at a public high school on the outskirts of Guadalajara. My family was not wealthy. My father worked as an electrician, spending his days crawling through cramped spaces and coming home with burns on his hands. My mother ran a small convenience store from the front of our house selling sodas and chips and phone cards to neighbors who could not afford to drive to the real supermarket. We lived in a concrete house with iron bars on the windows, in a neighborhood where stray dogs wandered the streets and the ice cream truck's music was the only melody that broke the afternoon heat. I started working when I was 14, first helping my mother at the store counting change and stacking shelves, then cleaning houses for neighbors, then babysitting for families who needed someone reliable and cheap. The money was not much, but it was mine. It meant I could buy my own school supplies, contribute something to the household, prove that I was not a burden. I took pride in that. In a family where every peso mattered, being able to earn my own way felt like the first step toward becoming someone. There is something else you need to understand about me, something that will matter later. I cannot swim. Where I grew up, swimming pools existed only in movies and in the rich neighborhoods across the railroad tracks. My mother used to say that poor girls did not need to know how to swim. There was no money for beach vacations, no backyard pools, no reason to learn. I never imagined that not knowing how to swim would become a matter of life and death. My mother was the one who connected me with the Mendoza family. Senora Mendoza, whose first name was Carmen, was a regular customer at our store. She would come by every few days to buy the bottled water and sometimes cigarettes, always dressed in professional clothes, always looking tired in a way that expensive makeup could not quite hide. One afternoon, she mentioned to my mother that she needed a babysitter, someone responsible, someone who could handle 3 children while she and her husband worked. My mother volunteered me before I could even process the conversation. The pay was better than anything I had earned before. 3 times what I made cleaning houses. The Mendozas lived in the nice part of town, the neighborhood on the other side of the railroad tracks, where the houses had gardens and walls tall enough to block out the noise of the street. The kind of neighborhood where children played in backyards instead of on cracked sidewalks. The kind of neighborhood where houses had swimming pools. I remember the first time I saw the Mendoza house. It was a Saturday morning in early June, the beginning of summer break, and the heat was already oppressive by 9 in the morning. I had ridden my bicycle across the railroad tracks, feeling the shift in atmosphere as the cramped streets of my neighborhood gave way to wide avenues lined with bougainvillea. The Mendoza house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, hidden behind cream-colored walls that rose higher than my head. When I pressed the intercom button, the iron gate swung open automatically, revealing a world I had only seen in magazines. The garden was immaculate. Purple bougainvillea cascaded over archways. Stone pathways wound between manicured hedges. The house itself was 2 stories of white stucco and terracotta roof tiles with large windows that gleamed in the sunlight. It looked like the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen. But even then, on that first day, something felt wrong. The feeling started the moment I stepped through the gate, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck like someone was watching me from behind. I turned around, but there was only the empty street shimmering in the heat. I told myself it was nerves. First day at a new job, new environment, new responsibilities. Of course, I was on edge. I walked up the stone path toward the front door, and that was when I saw the pool. It was behind the house, visible through a gap between the main structure and a small guest house, a rectangle of blue water, perfectly still reflecting the cloudless sky like a mirror. The surface was so smooth it looked almost solid, like glass you could walk across. I stopped walking without meaning to my eyes, fixed on that unnatural stillness. There was no wind that morning. The bougainvillea hung limp. The leaves on the trees did not stir. But as I watched a single ripple spread across the pool's surface, just one, starting from the center and expanding outward until it reached the edges and disappeared, as if something beneath the water had moved. I blinked and the surface was still again, perfectly, impossibly still. It must have been a bird, I told myself, a leaf fallen from a tree, something normal and explainable. I turned away from the pool and continued toward the front door, but I could not shake the feeling that the water was watching me, that something beneath its surface had noticed my arrival. Senora Mendoza answered the door before I could knock. She was a woman in her early 40s, attractive in a severe way, with hair pulled back so tightly it seemed to stretch the skin of her forehead. Her smile was warm, but it did not reach her eyes. Even then, before I knew anything, I noticed that. The disconnect between her welcoming words and the tension in her face. She led me inside, and the temperature dropped immediately. Air conditioning, I realized, a luxury my family could not afford. The cool air felt wonderful after the heat outside, but there was something else beneath it, a dampness that seemed to cling to my skin, a faint smell that I could not quite identify. Not unpleasant exactly, just wrong, like chlorine mixed with something older, something that had been wet for too long. The living room was beautiful. Leather sofas in rich brown, a television larger than any I had ever seen, paintings of landscapes on the walls. Everything clean and expensive and perfectly arranged. But the windows. I noticed the windows immediately. They were everywhere. Large panels of glass that looked out onto the backyard, onto the pool. From the living room, you could see the water. From the kitchen, you could see the water. Later, I would discover that the window in the smallest bedroom, the one that belonged to the youngest child, also faced the pool. No matter where you were in that house, you were never more than a glance away from that rectangle of blue. Senora Mendoza introduced me to her children. Diego was 10, the oldest, a quiet boy with his father's dark eyes and a way of looking at you that made you feel like he was calculating something. Mateo was 8, more energetic, already fidgeting with a handheld video game before I had finished saying hello. They were polite in the automatic way of children who had been taught manners, shaking my hand and mumbling greetings before returning to their screens. Then there was Isabela. She was 6 years old, the youngest, and she was not like her brothers. Where they were restless and distracted, she was perfectly still. She sat in the corner of the living room, her back to us, staring out the window at the pool. Her hair was long and black, hanging past her shoulders, and she wore a white dress that seemed too formal for a Saturday morning at home. She did not turn around when her mother called her name. Senora Mendoza's voice tightened. "Isabela, come say hello to Lucía." The little girl did not move for a long moment. Then slowly she turned. I have thought about that moment many times over the years, what I saw in her face, what I should have recognized. She was beautiful, with delicate features, and skin so pale it was almost translucent. But her eyes were too old for a 6-year-old, dark and deep, and knowing in a way that made my skin crawl. She looked at me and she smiled. Marisol says, "You're pretty." The words hung in the air between us. Senora Mendoza laughed, but the sound was brittle forest. Marisol is Isabela's imaginary friend, she explained quickly. All children have them at this age. It is nothing to worry about. I nodded, forcing myself to smile back. Of course, I remembered having an imaginary friend when I was young, a girl named Rosa, who I used to talk to before falling asleep. It was normal. Every child did it. But something was wrong with the way Isabela said the name, the way her eyes flickered toward the window when she spoke, as if checking for approval. And when she said Marisol, I could have sworn I saw the pool's surface ripple again. Just once, just enough to notice. Must be the wind, I thought, just the wind. But there was no wind that day. Senora Mendoza gave me a tour of the house, showing me where things were kept, explaining the children's routines. She paused at the back door, the one that led to the patio and the pool. There is one rule, she said. Her voice had changed. Lower. More serious. Do not let Isabela go near the pool alone. Not ever. Do you understand? I nodded, confused by the intensity in her eyes. Of course. I would not let any of the children near the pool unsupervised. That was basic safety. No. Senora Mendoza gripped my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. I mean, Isabela specifically. The boys can swim. Isabela cannot. And she is drawn to the water in a way that is not normal. If you turn your back for even a moment, she will be at the edge of that pool, staring down into it like she is looking for something. Do not let it happen. Promise me. I promise, I said, unsettled by the desperation in her voice. I will watch her carefully. She left for work shortly after, along with her husband, a tall man with a mustache who barely acknowledged my presence. The house fell silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of Diego and Mateo playing video games in the living room. I found Isabela in the kitchen, standing at the window, her small hands pressed against the glass. She was staring at the pool. "What are you looking at?" I asked, keeping my voice light. She did not turn around. "Marisol lives in the water," she said. "She is lonely. She wants me to come play with her." A chill ran down my spine despite the warmth of the kitchen. "Marisol is not real," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "She is just pretend." "You know that, right?" Isabela finally turned to look at me. Her expression was patient, almost pitying. "Marisol is more real than you are," she said. "She has been here longer. She will be here after you're gone." Then she walked past me out of the kitchen, her small footsteps silent on the tile floor. I stood there for a long moment, telling myself that it was nothing. Children said strange things all the time. It was part of their imagination, part of how they process the world. There was nothing supernatural about a 6-year-old's fantasy friend. But I could not stop looking at the pool. The water was still now, perfectly unnaturally still. The sun reflected off its surface like a sheet of metal. But something about it felt wrong, felt like it was waiting. "It is just water," I whispered to myself. "Just a swimming pool, just chlorine and concrete and nothing else." I turned away from the window and went to check on the boys. The first day passed without incident. At 6:30, Senora Mendoza came home. She paid me for the day, thanked me for my work, and walked me to the door. Before I left, Isabela appeared in the hallway. She ran to me and wrapped her small arms around my waist in a hug. Marisol says she will see you again, she whispered against my stomach. She says she has been waiting a long time for a friend like you. Then she let go and disappeared back into the house. I rode my bicycle home in the fading light, Isabela's words echoing in my head. She will stay longer than the others. There was something wrong with that sentence, something that did not make sense until I replayed my earlier conversation with Senora Mendoza. We have hired a few babysitters before you, she had mentioned. None of them lasted. They said the house made them uncomfortable. But I am sure you will be fine. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now pedaling through the darkening streets toward the railroad tracks, I wondered how many babysitters had come before me and why had none of them stayed. The answer I would learn later was simple. They did not quit. They ran. And as I crossed the railroad tracks back into my neighborhood, back into the normal world of stray dogs and cracked sidewalks and my mother's small store, I did not know that I had already been chosen. That something in that house, something that lived beneath the still surface of that pool, had looked at me on my first day and decided that I would do, that I would be the one to finally keep my promise. Some doors once opened can never be closed. I opened one that summer. I just did not know it yet. The second day was when the food started disappearing. I arrived at the Mendoza house at 8 in the morning, earlier than required, partly because I wanted to make a good impression and partly because I had barely slept. All night I had dreamed of still water and a little girl's voice whispering words I could not quite understand. When I finally gave up on sleep and opened my eyes, the first light of dawn was creeping through my window, and I could have sworn I heard the sound of dripping water somewhere in my room. There was no water. There was no dripping, but I checked anyway, looking in corners and behind furniture like a child afraid of monsters. Finding nothing made me feel foolish. Finding nothing should have made me feel relieved. It did not. Senora Mendoza let me in with the same tight smile as the day before. She was already dressed for work, her hair pulled back, her makeup flawless, but the shadows under her eyes were darker than yesterday. She looked like a woman who had not slept well, either. The morning passed quietly. I made scrambled eggs and toast for the boys, who ate without looking up from their phones. Isabela drifted into the kitchen around 10, still wearing her white nightgown, her bare feet silent on the tile floor. She climbed into a chair at the kitchen table and sat there, watching me. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Are you hungry?" "Marisol is hungry," she replied. I paused, spatula in hand. What does Marisol want to eat? Isabela tilted her head as if listening to something I could not hear. She wants bread, just bread, on a small plate in the corner of the table. It was a strange request, but harmless. I tore off a piece of bread, placed it on a small plate, and set it in the corner of the table where Isabela had indicated. The little girl watched me with those ancient eyes, nodding in approval. Marisol says, "Thank you." I turned back to the stove to finish cleaning up. It took me perhaps 30 seconds to wipe down the counter and put the pan in the sink. When I turned round, the bread was gone. The plate was empty, not a crumb remained. I stared at the plate, then at Isabela. She was still sitting in the same position, her hands folded in her lap, her expression serene. "Did you eat that?" I asked. "No, Marisol ate it." I looked around the kitchen. Diego and Mateo were in the living room. I had not heard anyone approach. There were no pets in the house that could have taken the food. "Where did the bread go, Isabela?" I told you. "Marisol ate it." She was very hungry. She said tomorrow she wants salt, just salt. She says salt tastes like the water in her home. A cold feeling spread through my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I walked to the corner of the table and examined the plate. It was perfectly clean, not just empty, but clean as if no food had ever touched it, as if the bread had simply ceased to exist. It became a pattern. Every day Isabela would ask me to leave food for Marisol. Bread on the second day, salt on the third, just a small pile of white crystals on a saucer that vanished the moment I looked away. On the fourth day she asked for water, and I watched the glass empty itself while my back was turned for no more than 10 seconds. I checked every possible explanation. I set traps, little tests. I marked the water level with my fingernail and turned away for exactly 5 seconds. When I looked back, the water was gone. On the 5th day, Isabela's request changed. We were sitting in the living room watching cartoons with the boys when she turned to me with that too-old expression on her young face. "Marisol wants something different today. What does she want? Your hair?" The words hit me like ice water. "What?" "She wants your hair," Isabela repeated calmly, "just a little piece. She says she needs it to make you her friend forever." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. "That is strange, Isabela. I am not going to give Marisol my hair. That is not a normal thing to ask for." Isabela's expression did not change, but something in the air shifted. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The cartoon on the television flickered just for a moment, the colors bleeding into static before snapping back to normal. "Marisol will not be happy," Isabela said. "When Marisol is not happy, she does things, bad things." "What kind of bad things?" The little girl did not answer. She simply turned back to the television, and after a moment I heard her whisper under her breath. Words I could not make out, words that were not meant for me. The consequences began that afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing lunch when I noticed the glass of water I had poured for myself. The water had turned cloudy murky with a greenish tint that had not been there before. I brought the glass to my nose and nearly gagged. It smelled like pond water, like something that had been stagnant for weeks. I poured it down the sink and filled a fresh glass from the tap. The water came out clear and clean. I drank it quickly, telling myself that the pipes in old houses could be unpredictable, that there was nothing strange about discolored water. But when I set the glass down on the counter and turned to check on the children, I felt something cold and wet beneath my foot. I looked down. There was a small puddle on the floor, directly in front of me. Clear water forming a shape that was almost like a footprint. A child's footprint. I had not spilled anything. The floor had been dry moments before. I grabbed a towel and mopped up the puddle, my hands trembling slightly. When I stood up, there was another puddle a few feet away, and another beyond that. A trail of wet footprints leading from the kitchen toward the hallway, toward Isabela's room. I followed them without thinking, my heart pounding in my chest. The footprints grew wetter as I walked the puddles larger until water was pooling on the floor in quantities that made no sense. By the time I reached Isabela's door, I was stepping through half an inch of standing water. The door was closed. I reached for the handle. It was ice cold, colder than anything should be in a house with central air conditioning, cold enough to hurt. I pulled my hand back, and the cold faded. The water on the floor began to evaporate, disappearing so quickly it was as if it had never been there. Within seconds, the hallway was dry again. Isabela's voice came through the door, calm and clear. Marisol says if you do not give her what she wants, she will take something else instead. The technology in the house started failing on the seventh day. It began with my phone. I was trying to call my mother during my lunch break, standing in the kitchen with the windows open to let in the breeze. And the call would not connect. I had full signal all 5 bars, but every time I dialed, I heard nothing but static. Not the normal static of a bad connection, but something deeper, wetter, like the sound of water rushing through pipes or waves crashing against rocks. I tried texting instead. The messages showed as sent, but were never delivered. The landline in the house was no better. When I picked up the receiver, I heard the same rushing water sound, and beneath it, something that might have been breathing, slow and rhythmic, like someone sleeping, or like someone waiting. That evening the lights began to flicker. It started in the living room, a subtle dimming that I attributed to the old wiring Senora Mendoza had mentioned. But then the flickering spread. Kitchen, hallway, bedrooms, every light in the house pulsing in unison like a heartbeat. The television switched itself to static at exactly 8:45. I was not watching the clock. I did not know the time until I checked my phone afterward, but at 8:45, in the middle of a cartoon that Mateo was watching, the screen went white with snow, and the speakers emitted a burst of that same rushing water sound I had heard on the phone. Mateo started crying. Diego stood up and backed away from the television. And Isabela, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, turned to look at me with an expression that was almost sympathetic. "Marisol does not like to be ignored," she said. "She gets lonely, and when she gets lonely, she gets angry." On the 10th day, Marisol left me a message. I had gone into the bathroom to wash my hands before preparing dinner. It was a small bathroom off the main hallway with white tile walls and a large mirror above the sink. I turned on the faucet, pumped soap into my palm, and began to scrub. When I looked up at the mirror, my reflection was not alone. There were words written on the glass, words that had not been there when I walked in, written in water as if someone had traced them with a wet finger, the letters dripping slowly down the surface. "I like you. You will be my friend." I stumbled backward, my wet hand slipping on the counter. My hip hit the edge of the sink, and pain shot through my side, but I barely noticed. I was staring at the words, watching them drip, watching them dissolve. They were gone in seconds. The mirror was clean and dry, as if I had imagined the whole thing, but I had not imagined it. I knew what I had seen. I ran out of the bathroom and straight into Isabela. She was standing in the hallway directly outside the door, as if she had been waiting for me. "Did you see Marisol's message?" she asked. "She worked very hard on it. She is not good at writing. She has been practicing." "Isabela," I said, my voice shaking, "this is not funny. This is not a game." The little girl looked up at me with those ancient eyes. "I know," she said. "Marisol is not playing. Marisol is serious. She wants you to be her friend. She says you are different from the others. She says you will understand what it feels like to be alone." On the 12th day, the message changed. I found it in the guest bedroom, the room Senora Mendoza had given me for nights when I needed to stay late. A small room on the first floor with a single window that faced, of course, the pool. I had gone in to get my jacket because the air conditioning was making me cold. The room should have been empty. The room should have been exactly as I had left it that morning. But on the small mirror above the dresser, written in the same dripping water as before, were new words. "Come into the water with me." I did not scream. I did not run. I stood there staring at the message until the letters dissolved and disappeared, and then I sat down on the edge of the bed and tried very hard not to cry. This was not my imagination. This was not stress or lack of sleep or an overactive mind. Something was in this house, something that lived in the water and wanted me to join it, something that had been waiting for a very long time. I should have quit that day. I should have walked out the door and never come back. But the money. And some stubborn part of me refused to believe that I could not handle this. I was 16 years old. I thought I was invincible. I was wrong. On the 14th day, Senora Mendoza asked me to stay overnight. She and her husband had a wedding to attend in another city. They would be gone until the following afternoon. She would pay me triple as my usual rate. The children would be fine. Diego was responsible. Mateo was obedient. And Isabela, she said with that tight smile, had been so much calmer lately. I said yes. The evening started normally enough. I made dinner for the children. We watched television together. At 9 o'clock, I put the boys to bed. They went without complaint, tired from the day. Isabela was harder. She did not want to sleep. She said Marisol was excited. She said Marisol had been waiting for tonight. Waiting for what I asked, tucking the blanket around her small body. Isabela smiled. You will see. I closed her door and went to the living room. I laid down on the sofa and closed my eyes, determined to get some sleep. The sound woke me at 2 a.m. Footsteps, wet footsteps, coming from the direction of the pool. I opened my eyes. The living room was dark except for the glow of the pool lights filtering through the windows. The clock on the wall read 2:07. The house was silent except for these footsteps growing closer, accompanied by the soft drip of water on tile. Someone was in the house. I should have called the police. I should have hidden. I should have done anything except what I actually did. I got up and followed the sound. The hallway was dark. The footsteps had stopped, but I could see a trail of water on the floor, gleaming faintly in the light from the pool outside. The puddles led directly to Isabela's door, which was slightly ajar. I crept toward it, my bare feet cold against the wet tile. Water seeped between my toes. The smell of chlorine was overwhelming now, mixed with something else. Something rotten, like things that had died in the water and been left to decay. I reached the door. I pressed my palm against the wood. From inside I heard voices, 2 voices. One was Isabela speaking in a sleepy murmur. The other was a child's voice, but wrong, wet, and gurgling like someone trying to speak while drowning. Come with me. The water is warm. We can play forever. I have been so alone. Isabela responded, her voice dreamy and distant. I am tired, Marisol. Can we go tomorrow? No. Tonight. It has to be tonight. She is here. She will try to stop us. I pushed open the door. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting silver shadows across the room. Isabela was sitting up in bed, her eyes half closed to her lips, moving in response to something I could not see. But I could see something. At the foot of her bed there was a shape, small, child-sized, dripping wet water pooling on the floor beneath it. Long black hair hung over its face, lank and sodden, sticking to pale skin. It wore what might have been a white dress, now gray and tattered and covered in something green and slimy. As I watched frozen in the doorway, the shape turned its head toward me. I saw its face. The skin was white, not pale, not fair, but white like paper, white like bone, bloated and waterlogged and wrong. The eyes were the worst, empty, completely empty. No iris, no pupil, just 2 white voids that seemed to look right through me. Its mouth opened, water poured out between its lips. You cannot have her. The voice was inside my head and outside it at the same time, filling the room like the smell of chlorine, filling my lungs like water. She is mine. Then the thing was gone. Between one blink and the next, it vanished. The water on the floor began to evaporate. The smell faded. Isabela slumped back against her pillow, fast asleep. I stood in the doorway for a long time, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. When I finally found the strength to move, I went to Isabela's bed and looked down at her. She was sleeping peacefully, but her nightgown was soaking wet, and on the pillow beside her head there was a small puddle of water, shaped like a child's hand. The next morning I told Senora Mendoza what I had seen. She did not tell me I had imagined it. She just listened, her face growing paler with every word. "You saw her," she whispered. "You actually saw her." "What is she?" I demanded. "What is that thing?" "We do not know exactly. When we bought this house, we were told there had been an accident. A child drowned in a pool 30 years ago. We thought it was just history." But then Isabela started talking about Marisol, and things started happening, things we could not explain. She grabbed my hands, her grip painfully tight. "There is only one thing I need from you, Lucía. Do not let Isabela go into that pool. Whatever happens, whatever you see or hear, do not let her go into the water, because if she goes in, Marisol will not let her come back out. 3 days," she said. "In 3 days we are bringing someone to the house, a woman who knows about these things. Just keep Isabela safe for 3 more days." I nodded. 3 days. I could do that. But as I left that evening, I felt Isabela's eyes on my back. I turned to look. She was standing at the window of her bedroom, her small hand pressed against the glass. Behind her, through the window, I could see the pool. And for just a moment, I could have sworn I saw another face beside hers, pale and bloated, with empty, white eyes. Both of them were smiling. The 17th day began with omens I should have recognized. I woke before dawn in my own bed, in my own room, in my family's small concrete house on the other side of the railroad tracks. The sheets beneath me were damp with sweat, though the night had not been particularly warm. I had dreamed of water again, of sinking through darkness while something cold wrapped around my ankles and pulled me down. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I noticed was the humidity. The air in my room felt thick and wet, heavy in my lungs, like breathing through a soaked cloth. My window was closed. The ceiling showed no signs of leaks, but moisture clung to every surface. I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the bed. My feet touched something cold and wet. I looked down. There was water on the floor, a small puddle no larger than a dinner plate directly beside my bed. As I watched, it seemed to shift and spread, reaching toward my toes like something alive. I pulled my feet back onto the mattress. By the time I gathered the courage to get out of bed, the puddle was gone, evaporated or absorbed or simply vanished back to wherever it had come from. But I knew I had not imagined it. Marisol was reaching beyond the Mendoza house. Marisol was following me home. I arrived at work at 8 o'clock. The morning heat was already brutal, the thermometer on the back patio reading 38 degrees Celsius. Senora Mendoza met me at the door with shadows under her eyes, deeper than I had ever seen them. 2 more days, she said. The woman who helps with these things is coming the day after tomorrow. We just need to get through 2 more days. Has something happened? I asked. She hesitated. Last night, Isabela woke up screaming. When we got to her room, she was standing at the window, staring at the pool. She said Marisol was calling her. She said Marisol was tired of waiting. What did you do? We locked her window. We moved her bed to the other side of the room. We stayed with her until she fell asleep again. She looked at me with desperate eyes. But I do not know how much longer we can keep her away from that water. Something is pulling her toward it, something stronger than us. I will watch her, I said. I will not let her out of my sight. The morning passed in a haze of tension. I made breakfast for the children. Diego ate his eggs without looking up from his phone. Mateo chattered about video games. Isabela sat at the table with her hands folded in her lap, eating nothing, staring at the window that faced the pool. She looked different that morning, paler than usual, with dark circles under her eyes, and there was something in her expression I'd not seen before, a kind of resignation. Marisol says, "Today is special," she told me. Marisol says she has been waiting for today for a very long time. What is special about today? Isabela smiled. It was not a child's smile. "Today is the day I go swimming," she said. "Isabela, no. You know you cannot go in the pool. Your mother told you it is not safe. Marisol will keep me safe. Marisol loves me. She is my best friend." "Marisol is not your friend," I said. "Marisol is something else, something dangerous." Isabela looked at me with those two old eyes. "Marisol said you would say that. She said you do not understand, but you will, soon." At 11:30, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother's number. I answered quickly, stepping into the hallway. "Lucía." My mother's voice was strained. "It is your grandmother. She fell this morning. We are at the hospital." My heart dropped. "Is she okay?" "She fell in the bathroom. They think she broke her arm. She is asking for you. She keeps saying she needs to tell you something important." I looked toward the living room where Isabela was sitting by the window. I could not leave. I was supposed to be watching her, but my grandmother, the woman who had raised me as much as my parents had. "Mom, I am working. I cannot just leave the children. Lucía, please." My mother's voice cracked. "She is asking for you. She says it is about the house where you work." The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. What I do not know. She keeps saying something about the pool, about a little girl. "Please, Lucía, just for a little while." I tried calling Senora Mendoza to tell her I needed to leave. The call would not connect. I dialed again and again, but each time I heard nothing but that wet Russian static, like something was blocking my connection to the outside world. I had no choice. I would have to leave the children alone for a little while. Diego was 10 years old, responsible enough to watch his siblings for an hour. I would go to the hospital as fast as I could and come straight back. I found Diego in his room. I need to leave for a little while. I said, "A family emergency. Can you watch your brother and sister until I return?" Diego looked up with annoyance but nodded. "Fine, just be quick." I knelt down to meet his eyes. "Listen to me carefully. Do not let Isabela go outside. Do not let her anywhere near the pool. Do you understand? Something in my voice must have gotten through to him." "Yeah," he said. "I understand. No pool. Promise me." "I promise." I hurried to check on Isabela one more time. She was exactly where I had left her, sitting by the window, staring at the pool. "I am going to be gone for a little while," I told her. "Stay inside. Stay away from the pool." Isabela did not look at me. She just smiled at her reflection in the glass. "Marisol says to take your time," she said. "Marisol says she will keep me company while you're gone." I should have stayed. Every fiber of my being told me to stay. But my grandmother was in the hospital saying she had something important to tell me about this house. I left. It was the worst mistake of my life. The hospital was a 12-minute ride from the Mendoza house under normal circumstances. I found my mother in the emergency room waiting area. "She is in room 4. Go quickly." I ran down the corridor. My grandmother lay in the bed by the window, her left arm wrapped in a fresh cast. Her white hair spread across the pillow, but her eyes were sharp, alert. Lucía. Her voice was urgent. "Come here. I need to tell you something." I rushed to her bedside. "Abuela, what happened? Are you okay?" "Never mind me." She gripped my hand with surprising strength. "The house where you work, the one with the swimming pool, you have to leave that job. You have to leave today." My blood ran cold. "What do you know about that house?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I know everything. I should have told you sooner." She took a shaky breath. 30 years ago, I worked as a cleaning woman for a family in that neighborhood, the Delgados. They had a little girl named Marisol. She was 6 years old, the same age as the child you watch now. Marisol was real. She was real. She died in that pool. I was the one who found her body. I could not breathe. It was a summer day just like today. Hot. Too hot. I came to clean the house, but no one answered. I let myself in with my key. The house was quiet. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Then I saw the pool, and I saw what was floating in it. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. The little girl, Marisol, face down in the water. I pulled her out, but it was too late. She had been dead for hours. The coroner said she drowned, but there were bruises on her legs, like something had grabbed her, like something had pulled her down. "Abuela," I said. "What are you telling me?" "I am telling you that something evil lives in that pool, something that did not leave when Marisol died. I am telling you that it wants another child to keep it company, and I'm telling you that if you do not go back to that house right now, it is going to take one." My phone buzzed. Diego's number. Lucía Diego's voice was a scream. "Isabela is in the pool. She just ran outside and jumped in, and she is not coming up." I was already running. I do not remember most of the ride back. I remember fragments, the burn of my lungs, the blur of streets and cars, the pounding of my heart that seemed louder than everything else. 7 minutes. It took me 7 minutes to get from the hospital to the Mendoza house, cutting through alleys and running red lights, and nearly getting hit twice. A trip that normally took 12 felt like hours when a child's life hung in the balance. 7 minutes underwater for a child who could not swim. The gate was open. I abandoned my bicycle and sprinted around the side of the house. The first thing I heard was screaming. Diego and Mateo at the edge of the pool, their faces white with terror. The second thing I heard was silence. The kind of silence that should not exist on a hot summer day. No cicadas, no birds, nothing except the screaming of 2 little boys and the soft splash of water against the pool's edges. The third thing I saw was the pool itself. It had changed. The water that had been crystal blue for the past 17 days was now dark and murky, thick with something that looked like algae, but moved wrong, moved with purpose. The surface churned slowly, like the breathing of some enormous sleeping creature. And in the center of the pool, in the deepest part, something was sinking. A small shape, a white dress, long black hair spreading out like a dark halo. Isabela. Isabela. I screamed her name as I ran to the edge. Through the murky water, I could see her sinking slowly toward the bottom. Her eyes were open, her mouth was open, her arms were spread wide, as if embracing something I could not see. And wrapped around her legs, pulling her down, was another shape, small and pale and wrong. A child's body, bloated and discolored, with hair that writhed like living things, and eyes that glowed white in the underwater darkness. Marisol. I could not swim. Water was my greatest fear. My mother had told me 1,000 times that poor girls did not need to know how to swim. But Isabela was drowning, and I was the only one who could save her. I did not think. I did not hesitate. I kicked off my shoes and jumped. The water hit me like a wall of ice, so cold it stole the breath from my lungs. I opened my eyes, and the chlorine burned like fire, but I kept them open, searching for Isabela. She was there, below me, sinking, and the thing that had been Marisol was wrapped around her, pulling her down with terrible strength. I kicked my legs and flailed my arms, doing something that was not quite swimming, but was close enough to move me through the water, down, deeper. The pressure built in my ears and my chest. My lungs screamed for air. But I kept going. Isabela was within reach. I stretched out my hand and grabbed her wrist. Her skin was ice cold, colder than the water. I pulled her toward me and kicked toward the surface. We did not move. Something was holding us down. I looked down, and I saw her. Marisol. She looked almost beautiful in a terrible way. Her face was round and childish, with features that might have been pretty 30 years ago. But her skin was white as bone, bloated and waterlogged with a faint green tint that spoke of decay. Her hair floated around her head like a dark cloud, and her eyes were empty white voids that seemed to glow with their own sick light. She was smiling, a wide, hungry smile that showed teeth too sharp for a child's mouth. Her lips moved, and I heard her voice inside my head. "She is mine. Go away." I pulled harder. Marisol pulled back. My lungs were empty now, my vision starting to go dark. In desperation, I did the only thing I could think of. I let go of Isabela with one hand and grabbed Marisol. Her body was not solid. It was soft and yielding, like grabbing a water balloon filled with something rotten. My finger sank into her shoulder, and she screamed. A sound that shook the water and made my nose bleed in a thin red stream. "Let go. You do not belong here." I did not let go. My vision was almost completely black now. I was dying. We were all dying. And then a thought came to me. Marisol did not want to kill. Marisol wanted a friend. I opened my mouth. Water rushed in cold and tasting of death, but somehow, impossibly, I spoke. "Marisol, I will be your friend. Let her go, and I will be your friend. I promise." The words came out as bubbles, as vibrations, and Marisol heard them. She stopped pulling, her white eyes fixed on mine, and I saw something in them that I had not expected. Hope, longing, the desperate need of a child who had been alone for 30 years. "You promise, I promise. Let her go, and I will be your friend. Forever." For a moment nothing happened. Then Marisol's grip loosened. Her hands opened wide. Her body drifted backward, sinking toward the bottom. But before she let go completely, she reached out and touched my ankle. Her fingers were ice. They burned like frostbite searing into my skin. I screamed, bubbles erupting from my mouth, and the last thing I saw before darkness took me was her smile. Forever. Then something grabbed me from above and pulled. I broke the surface, choking on water and blood. Someone was dragging me to the edge of the pool. Voices were shouting, hands were pounding on my back. I rolled onto my side and vomited pool water onto the concrete. It kept coming, more than I thought my body could hold. Beside me, Isabela was doing the same, coughing and choking, while Diego knelt beside her, his face streaming with tears. I turned my head and looked at the pool. The water was clear again, crystal blue, sparkling in the sunlight, as if nothing had happened. But in the center, just below the surface, I could see a shape, small and pale, watching. Marisol had not gone anywhere. She was just waiting for me to keep my promise. The Mendozas came home around 3 o'clock. I told them everything. They did not question me. The woman named Remedios came that evening, silver hair, dark eyes, hands that smelled like herbs and smoke. She walked through the house, slowly spending a long time at the edge of the pool. When she was done, she sat with me alone in the kitchen. "You made a promise," she said. It was not a question. I had to. She was going to kill Isabela. Remedios nodded. "You saved a child's life, but you need to understand what you have done. A promise to the dead cannot be broken. It is a bond that will last until it is fulfilled. What does that mean? It means she will come for you. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. The drowned ones are patient, but she will come. And when she does, she will expect you to keep your word. How do I stop her? You cannot stop her. You can only delay her. Stay away from water, all water deeper than your ankles. Do not swim. Do not bathe in tubs. Do not go near lakes or rivers or the ocean. As long as you stay on dry land, she cannot touch you. Water is her domain. Without it, she is weak. And if I go into water, then she will take you," Remedios said simply, "and you will be with her forever, just as you promised. When it was over, I went home. I told my mother I was fine. I did not tell her about the promise. Some burdens are meant to be carried alone. I went to my room and looked at my ankle, at the bruise already forming there. 5 small marks like fingerprints arranged in a pattern that looked like a child's hand. Marisol's mark, her claim on me, a reminder that I belong to her now. I pulled back the covers and climbed into bed, but I did not sleep. I lay there in the darkness, listening for the drip of water or the pad of wet footsteps. They did not come. Not that night, but I knew they would, eventually. Marisol had promised, and the dead always keep their promises. That was 6 years ago. I am 22 now, a university student studying education in Guadalajara. I live in a tiny apartment on the 3rd floor of a building with no pool, no fountain, no decorative water features of any kind. I chose it specifically for that reason. I checked every inch of the property before signing the lease. Isabela is 12 years old now. I saw her once about a year ago at a shopping center. She was with her mother laughing at something on her phone, looking like any normal preteen girl. She did not recognize me. Children that age forget trauma easily. Their minds protect them, burying the terrible things beneath layers of ordinary memories. I wish my mind worked that way. The Mendoza family sold their house 8 months after the incident. They filled in the pool and converted the backyard into a garden. Maybe that will help, Senora Mendoza told me. Maybe without the water, whatever is there will finally rest. I did not tell her that I doubted it would make a difference. Marisol is not haunting a place. She is haunting me. I have kept my promise to Remedios. 6 years without entering any body of water deeper than my ankles. 6 years of quick showers of staying far from beaches and lakes and rivers. My friends think I have a phobia. They do not know the real reason. The reminder started small. A puddle on my bathroom floor with no source. A damp handprint on my window that appeared overnight. The faint smell of chlorine in my apartment. Little things. Easy to dismiss, but they have gotten worse. 3 months ago, I woke to find my sheets soaking wet. Not damp, soaking. When I stripped the bed, I found a small handprint pressed into the wet fabric. The size of a 6-year-old's hand. Last month I was brushing my teeth when I looked in the mirror and saw something behind me. A shape, small and dark, standing in the corner. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back at the mirror, The glass was fogged with moisture, and there were words traced in the condensation. I miss you. Last week I found something on my pillow, a doll, old, ruined by time and water. Its dress was white once, now stained gray-green with algae. Its hair was black and matted. Its painted eyes had faded to blank white circles, and on the hem of its dress, embroidered in faded thread, was a name, Marisol. I have thrown it away 4 times. It always comes back. It sits in a locked box under my bed now. I do not know what else to do with it. 2 nights ago, I came out of my bedroom and found wet footprints leading from my bathroom to my bed. Small footprints, child-sized. Something had stood over me while I slept. Last night was the worst. I woke at 3 in the morning to the sound of dripping water from my bathroom. Then I heard the voice, soft and wet and childish, singing a song I did not recognize. The words were distorted, gargled, as if being sung from underwater. I did not get up. I lay there with my eyes squeezed shut until dawn. This morning I found a new message on my bathroom mirror. When will you come swim with me? If you're listening to this story, I need you to understand something. This is not entertainment. This is not fiction. This is a warning. Do not make promises to things you do not understand. Do not bargain with the dead. And if a child ever tells you about a friend who lives in the water, who is always wet, who wants them to come play beneath the surface, believe them. Some doors once open can never be closed. Some prices once agreed upon must eventually be paid. I opened a door 6 years ago. I have been running from what came through ever since. But you cannot run forever. And Marisol always keeps her promises. Last night, just before I fell asleep, I heard her voice, right beside my ear, as if she were lying in bed next to me. Tomorrow is a good day for swimming. I do not know what she means. I do not want to know. But when I looked in the mirror this morning, just before I started writing this, I saw her standing behind me, not in the corner, not in the shadows, right behind me, her white eyes inches from my neck, her cold, wet hand reaching for my shoulder. She was smiling. I did not turn around. I already knew she would not be there. But she is getting closer, and the water in my sink has started running on its own. Check your bathroom mirror tonight. Check the water in your sink, because you have heard her name now too, Marisol, and she is always looking for new friends. Sweet dreams.